Here is the translation of the story into English. The number one rule for robbing a man worth 3 billion euros is simple: don't look at him. Look at his watch, look at the exits, look at the heart of ice diamond necklace on his wife's neck, but never, ever, look into the target's eyes. I broke that rule exactly 5 minutes into the party. The ballroom of the Palazzo Reale in Venice smelled of old money, expensive champagne, and the kind of boredom only the ultra-rich can fake. I was leaning against a marble column, swirling the stem of an empty crystal glass, pretending to be Elena Vancer, a minor socialite from Monaco. My dress was rented, my invitation was forged, and my real name, Lyra, was buried under 3 layers of false identities. You look like someone who would rather be anywhere else but here. The voice came from behind. Low. Raspy. A British accent too polished to be trustworthy. My heart skipped a beat, but I maintained my posture. I turned slowly, painting a smile of rehearsed boredom onto my face. Galas are just business meetings where people wear silk instead of suits, I replied, looking up. And then I stopped. The man in front of me wasn't the target. The target was a short, bald Swiss banker. This man was a problem. He was tall, wearing a black tuxedo that looked like it had been stitched directly onto his body by shadows. Dark hair, slightly messed up by the wind from the canal outside, and eyes. God, gray eyes that seemed to see right through the cheap fabric of my rented dress. He held a glass of whiskey as if it were a weapon. Julian Thorne, he said, extending his free hand. He didn't ask for my name. He just offered his as if it were a dangerous gift. Julian Thorne. The name hit my brain like a lightning bolt. Thorne wasn't a banker. He was a security consultant. The kind of man museums and private collectors hired when Interpol failed. The kind of man who hunted people like me for sport. What the hell was he doing here? I shook his hand. His skin was warm, his palm rough, a shocking contrast to the coldness of the hall. Elena, I lied. Elena, he repeated, testing the name on his tongue as if looking for the flaw in it. Curious. You don't have a Monaco accent, Elena. I felt a drop of cold sweat slide down my back. I studied abroad. Is that so? He took a step forward, invading my personal space. His scent enveloped me, sandalwood, rain, and danger. Let me guess. Switzerland? Or perhaps London? Where you learned to crack Titan series safes with a hairpin? The air left my lungs. The sound of the orchestra in the background seemed to vanish. He knew. I pulled my hand away abruptly and took a step back. I think you've mistaken me for someone else, Mr. Thorne. I don't think so, Lyra, he whispered my real name close to my ear, sending a violent shiver down my spine. I know exactly who you are. The phantom thief. The woman who stole the Faberge egg from Moscow and vanished without a trace. My hand instinctively went to the small clutch where I kept my toolkit. If I ran now, maybe I could reach the getaway gondola in 3 minutes. If you're going to arrest me, I murmured, dropping the socialite disguise and letting my real voice, sharp and cold, come out, I suggest you do it quickly. But I'm warning you, I'm not the type to surrender without breaking a few Ming vases. Julian laughed. It wasn't a mocking laugh. It was amused. Arrest you? What a waste of talent that would be. He took a sip of whiskey, his gray eyes shining with something I couldn't decipher. I'm not here to hand you over to the police, Lyra. I'm here because you are about to steal the heart of ice. I crossed my arms. There was no point in pretending anymore. It's a beautiful piece. It would look better in my pocket than on that woman's sagging neck. I agree, he said, surprisingly. But there's a problem. The necklace is a fake. I blinked. What? The real one is in an underground vault in Zurich. The banker is using his wife as bait. He knows there are rumors of a heist tonight. He's waiting for someone to take the bait. I looked at the target on the other side of the room. The banker was smiling, but his eyes were scanning the venue nervously. Extra security at the doors. Discreet cameras I hadn't noticed before. It was a trap. A very well-made trap. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, turning back to face Julian. "You're the watchdog. You should be waiting for me to put my hands on that thing so you can cuff me. Let's just say I have my own interests." He placed the empty glass on a passing tray. "And let's say I hate seeing artistic talent wasted on a cubic zirconia forgery." He moved closer again, so close I could see his dark lashes against pale skin. The tension between us crackled like static electricity. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. Predator recognizing predator. "Leave with me," he said. It wasn't a request. Leave? With the man who can ruin my life? The alternative is you trying to steal that fake and getting arrested in 5 minutes by the armed guards disguised as waiters. He checked his watch, a vintage Rolex worth more than the fake necklace. "You have 30 seconds to decide, Lyra. Security is going to close the doors for a routine check soon." I looked at the exits. The waiters were moving. Hands going to their earpieces. He was telling the truth. I bit my lip, frustrated. Months of planning, thrown in the trash. If this is a trick to take me into an alley and arrest me. If I wanted you arrested, you already would be. The main doors began to close slowly. "Fine," I hissed. "Get me out of here." Julian smiled. It was a devastating smile, full of secrets and bad promises. He offered his arm, like a Victorian gentleman taking a lady for a stroll in the garden. "Smile, darling. We're just two bored lovers stepping out for some fresh air." I took his arm. The muscle beneath the fabric was hard as rock. As we walked toward the side door, passing guards who didn't even look at us thanks to the aura of authority Julian exuded, he leaned in toward me. "By the way," he whispered, "you won't be going home empty-handed tonight." "Oh really? And what am I going to steal?" He opened the door to the cold Venice night, the wind hitting our faces, and looked at me with an intensity that made my knees tremble. "I have a job for you, Lyra. A real job. And if you survive it, the payout will make the heart of ice look like a carnival trinket." We stepped into a matte black speedboat waiting at the private dock. The engine roared to life. As we pulled away from the palace, leaving the music and the trap behind, I looked at Julian Thorne. I had just stepped into the Wolf's boat. And, God help me, I was curious to see where he would take me. The problem with high-speed boats in Venice isn't the noise, it's the forced intimacy. The cabin of Julian Thorne's speedboat was a cocoon of dark leather and polished mahogany, shielding us from the cutting wind of the lagoon. But there was no protection against him. Julian steered with a casual hand on the wheel, his tuxedo jacket open, his white shirt stretched over broad shoulders that seemed to fill all the available space. With every sharp turn in the dark canals, centrifugal force threw me against him. And every time, he didn't move a millimeter. It was like colliding with a wall of warm granite. "You're shivering, Lyra." His voice was deep, vibrating through the leather seat and lodging straight in my spine. He didn't look at me, his eyes were fixed on the black water ahead, but his free hand left the dashboard and slid along the back of the seat, dangerously brushing the bare skin of my back, exposed by the gala dress. The touch was electric. A thermal shock against my cold skin that made me gasp softly. "It's the wind," I lied, my voice coming out huskier than I intended. "And the adrenaline of running away with a stranger." Julian turned his head slowly. In the gloom of the cabin, lit only by the dim lights of the dashboard, his eyes were pools of molten gray. He smiled, and it wasn't a gentleman's smile. It was the smile of a wolf that had just cornered its prey. "You and I know we aren't strangers," he murmured. "I've been studying your every move for months. The way you bite your lower lip when you're concentrating, like right now." I released my lip immediately, feeling my face heat up. "You are a very expensive stalker, Mr. Thorne. I am a man who appreciates art. And you, cara mia, are the most fascinating piece in motion I have ever seen." He slowed the boat, pulling into a dark private dock beneath an ancient palace. The engine died, leaving only the sound of water lapping against the hull and my own irregular breathing. The silence was heavy, charged with a tension that seemed to thicken the air. Julian stood up, dominating the tiny space. He reached out a hand to help me out, but when I placed my fingers in his palm, he didn't pull me onto the dock. He pulled me into him. I collided against his chest, my hands instinctively landing on the hard muscles beneath the fine linen shirt. I could feel his heartbeat, slow, steady, controlled. His scent enveloped me completely, sandalwood, night rain, and the intoxicating aroma of expensive whiskey and masculine danger. "Safe," he whispered, his face inches from mine, his warm breath grazing my cheek. "We are safe here." "With you?" I challenged, lifting my chin to face him, refusing to back down. "I highly doubt that." His thumb traced the line of my jaw, a touch so light it felt like a burn. "Smart. Never lower your guard around me, Lyra. It would be fatal." We went up to the penthouse in a mirrored private elevator. I watched our reflections, him, tall and imposing, a force of nature in an undone tuxedo, me, small and tense beside him, looking ready to fight or be kissed. Maybe both. The apartment was an extension of him, elegant, dark, dangerously seductive. Glass walls showed Venice glistening below. Julian went straight to the bar. "Bourbon," he said, pouring 2 glasses. He walked over to me but didn't hand me the drink immediately. He stopped inside my personal space, forcing me to retreat until my back met the cold glass of the panoramic window. I was cornered. And, God help me, I didn't want to leave. "Let's talk business," I tried, my voice faltering slightly as he rested a hand on the glass beside my head, trapping me. "Business." He took a sip of the whiskey, his eyes traveling shamelessly down my neckline, up my neck, until they met my eyes. "Of course. The deal is this: Viktor Volkov has a painting. A Caravaggio. The Fall of Lucifer. I want it." "Volkov?" I tried to focus on the name, on the danger, but it was hard to think when Julian's knee insinuated itself between my legs, pressing lightly against the fabric of my dress. The contact was intimate, possessive. My legs felt weak. "He kills people who touch his things, Julian." "He'll try," Julian agreed, leaning in closer. His lips were so close I could taste the bourbon on his breath. "But you are the best. I saw you in Moscow. I saw how you move. Like smoke. Like a ghost." He lowered his head, his nose grazing the sensitive curve between my neck and shoulder. I closed my eyes, a violent shiver running through my body, my fingers curling and gripping the lapels of his jacket. "What do I get out of this?" I whispered, my head falling back, exposing my throat to him. Julian let out a low, raspy laugh, vibrating against my skin. He didn't kiss my neck, but the promise of the kiss was almost more torturous. "Freedom, Lyra. Volkov has a server with Interpol files. Your DNA. Your fingerprints. Everything that keeps you from sleeping at night. I give you the server. You give me the painting." He pulled back millimeters, enough to look me in the eye again. The intensity of his gaze was devastating. There was desire there, raw and unapologetic, mixed with cold determination. You clear your name. You stop running. And then? I asked, breathless. When I stop running? Julian brought his free hand to the nape of my neck, his long fingers interlacing in my hair, pulling gently to tilt my face toward his. The tension was a taut wire about to snap. Then, his voice dropped to a rough whisper, his lips brushing mine with every word. Then, you and I can figure out what to do with all this energy we're wasting trying not to devour each other right now. I should push him away. I should slap him, take the boat, and run. But my body betrayed my brain. I leaned forward, seeking the contact, seeking his heat. Paris, he whispered against my mouth, stopping a millimeter from kissing me, a cruel and delicious tease. We leave tomorrow at 6. Say yes, Lyra. Say yes and come play with fire. I looked at his mouth, then at the gray eyes that promised ruin and ecstasy in equal measure. Danger had never looked so attractive. Yes, I breathed. Julian smiled, triumphant. He finally closed the distance and pressed his lips to the corner of my mouth, a slow, wet, hot kiss that made me grab his shoulders to keep from falling. Good girl, he murmured, pulling away before I could deepen the kiss, leaving me cold, trembling, and desperate for more. He walked toward the hallway, loosening his bow tie and tossing it on the floor. The guest room is on the left. Try to get some rest. He stopped at the door of his own room and looked at me over his shoulder, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to discuss the logistical details in my bed. I stood still in the living room, my heart beating like a wild drum in my chest, the taste of him ghosting on my lips. Paris would be a disaster. I knew it. But as I watched his bedroom door close, I realized stealing the painting would be the easy part. The hard part would be not letting Julian Thorne steal the rest of my sanity. At 30,000 feet, the world seems insignificant. But inside the pressurized cabin of Julian Thorne's private jet, tension occupied every cubic centimeter of space. The plane's interior smelled of new leather and freshly brewed espresso. I was sitting in a cream velvet armchair, watching the clouds over the Alps through the oval window, trying to ignore the man sitting across from me. Julian was no longer wearing the tuxedo. He had changed into a dark gray cashmere sweater and black trousers, a look that screamed old money and relaxed comfort. He was reading a financial newspaper in French, with reading glasses on the tip of his nose, an annoyingly domestic detail for a man who, hours before, had pinned me against a window in Venice. Your breakfast is going to get cold, Lyra. He didn't look up from the paper. His voice was calm, as if we were on a Sunday morning and not on our way to commit an international crime. I'm not hungry, I lied, pushing the untouched croissant away. I have questions. Julian folded the newspaper meticulously and placed it on the walnut table between us. He took off his glasses, revealing those gray eyes that seemed to undress my soul. Ask, then. We have an hour until we land at Le Bourget. How are we getting into Volkov's penthouse? I leaned forward. I know he has military-grade security. Pressure sensors in the floor, thermal lasers, guards who shoot first and ask questions later. We can't just walk in through the front door. Julian smiled, bringing his coffee cup to his lips. Actually, that is exactly what we are going to do. He touched a button on the table, and a holographic screen rose silently. Architectural blueprints of a building on Avenue Montaigne floated between us. Volkov is hosting a private auction tonight, Julian explained, pointing to the top floor. The Fall of Lucifer is the centerpiece. He invited 12 of the wealthiest and most unscrupulous collectors in Europe. We are the 13th invitation. We? I arched an eyebrow. Julian stood up. The movement was fluid, predatory. He rounded the table and stopped beside my armchair. The space in the jet was ample, but with him there, it suddenly felt tiny. He swiveled my chair so I was facing him, then rested his hands on the armrests, cornering me again. Yes, he murmured, leaning down until our faces were aligned. You will be Valentina Rossi, heiress to an Italian textile empire with a taste for forbidden art. And I will be your fiancé and financial advisor, who is desperate to buy you a wedding gift. Fiancé? The word came out like a choke. You're kidding. It's the perfect cover. His hand left the arm of the chair and slid to my knee. The heat of his palm penetrated the fabric of my trousers, burning my skin. A couple in love, focused only on each other, distracted. No one suspects foolish lovers. I don't know if I can pretend to be in love with you without vomiting, Julian. His smile widened, turning into that wolfish grin that made my stomach do flips. Ah, cara mia, you don't need to pretend the passion. The tension between us? The electricity? They will interpret that as desire. His thumb began to draw slow, tortuous circles on my inner thigh. And as for the distracted part, leave that to me. My breath hitched. His touch was moving up, dangerously close, dangerously slow. I should push him away. I should assert my professional position. But my body betrayed me, leaning imperceptibly toward him. And the plan? I managed to ask, my voice a husky thread. Once we're inside? Julian didn't stop his hands' movements, but his expression hardened slightly, focused on the job. During the auction, I'm going to create a diversion. Something subtle, but that demands Volkov's attention. You will have a 3-minute window. The painting is behind a force field in the main office, adjacent to the hall. You need to disable the biometric alarm, cut the glass, and swap the canvas for a replica my team has already prepared. 3 minutes? My mind tried to focus on the numbers, but his scent, sandalwood and that clean, masculine aroma, was making me dizzy. For a level 5 Titan vault? It's impossible. You are the phantom thief, he whispered, bringing his lips close to my ear. I felt his teeth graze my earlobe, a touch that sent electric shocks straight to my lower belly. You do the impossible. That is why I chose you. He pulled away abruptly, leaving me cold and gasping. He walked to a cabinet built into the cabin wall and took out a black velvet box. Stand up, he ordered softly. My legs were shaking, but I obeyed. Julian opened the box. Inside rested a black diamond necklace, tight to the throat, a stunning and aggressive piece. Part of the disguise, he said, taking the jewel from the box. Valentina Rossi likes to show off. I can put it on myself. I don't doubt it. But I prefer to do it. He walked around and stood behind me. He swept my hair aside, exposing the nape of my neck. I felt the cold metal of the diamonds against my skin, followed immediately by Julian's warm fingers closing the clasp. He took longer than necessary. His fingertips caressed the sensitive skin behind my ears, trailing down the tendons of my neck to my shoulders. I closed my eyes, my head tilting back, resting against his chest. I could feel his breath on my hair. You fit perfectly in my hands, Lyra, he murmured, his voice a dark vibration against my back. It's a shame we are playing such a dangerous game. In other circumstances, we wouldn't leave this plane for days. I turned in his arms, facing him. The necklace felt like a luxury collar, heavy and possessive. In other circumstances, Julian, I would have already stolen your watch and disappeared. He laughed, low and husky, and held my chin, forcing me to look up. Try. I'd love to see you try. The pilot announced the descent over the intercom, breaking the bubble of suffocating intimacy. Julian let go of me, but his eyes remained locked on mine, promising things that had nothing to do with art theft. Paris awaits us, he said, adjusting the collar of his sweater. "Get ready, darling. The stage is set. And if we fail tonight, prison will be the least of our problems. Volkov doesn't usually leave witnesses." I looked at the approaching Paris skyline, the Eiffel Tower and Iron Needle against the gray morning sky. The game had begun. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know if I was running toward freedom or into a gilded trap I would never want to leave. Paris at night is a promise. Avenue Montaigne, however, is a sentence. The black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided silently to the entrance of Viktor Volkov's building. Outside, the flash of paparazzi cameras popped like small artificial lightning bolts, hungry for any glimpse of the European elite entering the most exclusive and illegal auction of the year. Inside the car, the air was thin. "Breathe, Valentina," Julian murmured, using my fake name like a caress and a warning. He was sitting beside me in the darkness of the back seat, his hand resting on my bare thigh, exposed by the dizzying slit of my dress. The dress, a creation of blood-red silk that looked like it had been poured over my body rather than sewn, was a weapon. It was made to distract. But at that moment, the only distracted person was me. Julian's thumb drew slow, possessive circles on my skin. "I'm calm," I lied, my voice coming out a little higher than usual. "I'm just going over the plan." "Forget the plan for a minute." He leaned in, his lips brushing the curve of my neck, exactly where the black diamond necklace rested. "If you go in there thinking about lasers and alarms, Volkov will smell your fear. You need to go in there thinking about us. There is no us, Julian. Tonight there is." He held my chin, turning my face to him. His gray eyes were dark, dilated. "Tonight, you are my fiancée. You are obsessed with me. You can't keep your hands off me. Understood?" I swallowed hard, his scent, that intoxicating aroma of danger and sophistication, filling my senses. "Understood." The driver opened the door. The sound of the street invaded the car. Julian got out first. He adjusted his tuxedo, exuding an arrogance that would make a king look humble, and extended his hand to me. "Let's give them a show, darling." As soon as my heels touched the sidewalk, the world turned into a blur of lights. Julian didn't just hold my hand, he interlaced our fingers and pulled my body against his, wrapping his arm around my waist with a firmness that bordered on pain. We walked down the red carpet as if we owned Paris. He whispered things in my ear, biting comments about the guests, obscene compliments about my dress, keeping me blushing, keeping me reacting to him. To the cameras, it was the flush of a woman in love. In reality, it was the adrenaline of being in the arms of a man who knew exactly which buttons to push. We entered the private elevator that would take us to the penthouse. As soon as the golden metal doors closed, cutting off the noise, Julian pinned me against the mirrored wall. There was no hesitation. He took my mouth with a hunger that made me dizzy. It wasn't a technical kiss for the cameras, it was raw, invasive. His hands moved up my waist, his fingers burying themselves in my hair, slightly messing up the perfect style. I moaned against his mouth, my hands gripping his jacket lapels, pulling him closer, forgetting for a second that we were about to rob a warlord. The doors opened with a soft ding. Julian pulled back millimeters, his lips swollen, eyes shining with triumph. He wiped a smudge of red lipstick from the corner of his mouth with his thumb. "Perfect," he whispered. "Now you look like a woman who just got kissed in an elevator." Volkov's penthouse was obscenely luxurious. Black marble, gold, and glass walls overlooking the Eiffel Tower. But the real treasure was on the walls, Picasso's, Rothko's, and at the back of the hall, covered by a velvet curtain, the empty space where the Caravaggio would be revealed. The air smelled of expensive cigars and heavy perfume. Men with shark eyes and women with glass smiles circled with champagne flutes. "Don't look at the security cameras," Julian instructed softly, guiding me by the waist through the crowd. His hand was warm on the small of my back, his fingers occasionally sliding to the curve of my hip. I've already mapped them. Just smile and drink. Valentina Rossi. A booming voice cut through the murmur of the party. We froze. Viktor Volkov was walking toward us. He was smaller than I imagined, but he occupied space like a black hole. He had a shaved head, an impeccable white suit, and eyes that looked like they were made of dirty ice. Mr. Volkov, Julian said, extending his hand with a predatory smile. Julian Thorne. It's an honor. And this is my fiancée, Valentina. Volkov ignored Julian's hand and took mine. He brought it to his lips, his eyes fixed on mine. The kiss on my hand was wet, lingering too long. I felt a shiver of repulsion go up my arm. Bellissima, Volkov said, with a heavy Russian accent. I heard the Rossi family has a voracious appetite for beautiful things. Appetites can be dangerous, Mr. Volkov, I replied, forcing a seductive smile while trying not to yank my hand away. But I rarely leave unsatisfied. Volkov laughed. His eyes traveled shamelessly down my cleavage. I like dangerous women. Perhaps I can show you my private collection later? I have pieces that aren't in the auction. I felt Julian's arm tighten around my waist. The grip was strong, possessive, almost territorial. The temperature around us dropped 10 degrees. I'm afraid Valentina is busy tonight, Viktor, Julian said. His voice was smooth, but there was a steel blade in it. My fiancé demands a lot of attention. Volkov looked from me to Julian, sizing him up. Predator against predator. For a second, I thought the disguise was going to drop. I thought guns were going to appear. Then, Volkov smiled. I understand. Young lovers. Enjoy the evening. The auction starts in 20 minutes. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I released the breath I didn't even know I was holding. Does he know? I whispered. No, Julian replied, but he didn't relax his grip on me. On the contrary, he pulled me even closer, resting his forehead against my temple. But he wants you. And that annoys me more than it should. I looked at him, surprised by the intensity in his voice. Jealousy, Julian? That's not part of the plan. Consider it an acting bonus. He kissed my neck, right below the ear, sending electric shocks through my whole body. 20 minutes, Lyra, he whispered against my skin, his voice returning to a professional tone, though his body was still pressed to mine in a way that screamed desire. I'll start the diversion in 10. Locate the biometric panel. And for the love of God, stop shaking. I'm not shaking from fear, I retorted, turning in his arms to face him, defiant. I know. He smiled, that devastating, conspiratorial smile. Let's steal a Caravaggio, darling. But first, let's get one more glass of champagne. We have 10 minutes to pretend we aren't the most dangerous criminals in this room. Julian guided me to the bar, but his gray eyes scanned the perimeter, cold and calculating. I knew that as soon as the clock struck the hour, the possessive lover would vanish and the lethal professional would take over. But as his hand caressed my back, promising protection and danger in equal measure, I realized the line between disguise and reality was getting dangerously thin. And I wasn't sure I wanted it to exist. 2 minutes. Julian's voice sounded in my ear, not through the air, but through the invisible micro-earpiece he had slid into my ear canal while adjusting my hair in the elevator. It was a phantom whisper, intimate and authoritative. We were in the center of the hall, surrounded by fake laughter and the clinking of crystal. Julian kept an arm around my waist, anchoring me, while his other hand held a glass of champagne with calculated indifference. Are you ready for the show? I murmured, smiling at an elderly duchess passing by. The The question is whether Volkov's electrical system is ready for me, he replied, his tone laden with amused arrogance. On my mark, Lyra. You know what to do. He turned to me, blocking the view of the room with his broad body. To anyone watching, it looked like just a love-struck fiancé seeking his fiancée's attention. I have something for you, he said. Before I could ask, he cupped my face and kissed me. It wasn't the devouring kiss from the elevator, it was soft, precise, and devastatingly brief. In the middle of the contact, I felt his hand slide into mine, pressing a small cold metal disc against my palm. The decoder, he whispered against my lips. Don't lose it. And, Lyra? What? Try not to miss me too much in the next 5 minutes. He pulled away, winking, and turned toward the stage where the auctioneer was about to begin. Now. Instantly, the lights in the hall flickered. Once. Twice. Then, the giant screens displaying the artworks crackled. The sound was sharp, an electronic screech that made half the guests cover their ears. The screens went black, then red, displaying a cascading error code. The sound system began playing a distorted opera at maximum volume. Chaos. The waiters stopped. Security guards put hands to their ears, shouting into radios, confused by the static interference Julian had just injected into the network. It was my cue. While everyone looked at the screens in panic, I slipped into the shadows. My movements changed. Socialite Valentina Rossi vanished, the phantom thief took over. I took off my high heels, holding them in one hand, and ran barefoot down the side corridor, the velvet carpet muffling my steps. The corridor was empty. Volkov's office was at the end, guarded by a solid oak door and an electronic panel that cost more than my entire life. I pressed the disc Julian gave me over the biometric reader. The device hummed. Blue lights spun. 3 seconds. 2. A soft click. The lock yielded. I entered and closed the door behind me, plunging into silence. The chaos of the party became a distant hum. The office was a tomb of mahogany and leather. The smell of tobacco was strong here. And there, on the opposite wall, was it. The vault. It wasn't an ordinary wall safe. The entire wall was bulletproof glass, and behind it, illuminated by dramatic beams of light, was the painting. The Fall of Lucifer. It was magnificent and terrifying, shadows and light battling on a 400-year-old canvas. But between me and the painting, there was a problem. Julian, I whispered, touching the diamond earring that served as a microphone. We have a problem. Laser grid. I see it, his voice came calmly, as if discussing the weather. I hacked the internal cameras. I'm watching you now, Lyra. And I must say, that view from behind is spectacular. I rolled my eyes, though an involuntary smile curved my lips. Focus, Thorne. The grid is dynamic. It shifts every 10 seconds. Correct. I will dictate the pattern. You move. Do you trust me? I looked at the nearly invisible red beams slicing through the air. One touch and the silent alarm would trigger, sealing the room and alerting Volkov. Do I have a choice? No. Now, right leg, 30 centimeters forward. Duck. I obeyed. The red silk dress was fluid, but the side slit was my salvation. I slid my leg through the opening, stretching the muscle, and passed under the first beam. The silk brushed my skin, the cold air of the office giving me goosebumps. Good, Julian's tone became deeper, raspier. Now arch your back. Slowly. There is a beam at chest height. I moved like water. Years of ballet and gymnastics combined with the adrenaline of the heist. I arched my back, feeling the tension in my abdominal muscles, my hair grazing the floor as I passed under the second level. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" I asked, my breathing becoming shallow from the effort. "Watching you contort that incredible body to steal a masterpiece?" He paused. "It's the most erotic thing I've ever seen in my life." "Left, Lyra. Quick." I took a side step, twisting my body to avoid a vertical beam. I was sweating now, a fine sheen on my skin. I was halfway there. Julian's voice was my guide, my anchor. He dictated every move with surgical precision, but the tone was pure seduction. It was as if he were touching me with his words. "One more step. Reach out. Grab the glass cutter." I reached the glass. I took the tool from my clutch. In seconds, I cut a perfect circle. The ozone smell of the laser burning the glass filled my nose. I used the suction cup and removed the piece of glass. I reached in. My fingers grazed the ancient frame. "Got it," I whispered. I replaced the original canvas with the rolled-up forgery I had strapped to my thigh under the dress. The weight of the original in my hands was intoxicating. "Great," said Julian. "Now the server." "It's in the desk. Right drawer. False bottom." I ran to the desk. Found the false bottom. There it was. A small black drive. My freedom. I grabbed it and put it in the neckline of my dress, feeling the cold metal against the warm skin of my chest. "I have everything. I'm leaving." "Lyra, wait." The shift in his tone made me freeze. The playfulness was gone. "What is it?" "Volkov. He left the hall. He didn't buy the technical glitch. He is heading to the office. Now." I looked at the door. It was 10 meters away. "How much time do I have?" 15 seconds. "You won't make it out the hallway without running into him." My heart hammered against my ribs. Cornered. "Then what?" "The balcony," commanded Julian. "Go out the window. Now." I ran to the glass doors leading to the terrace. I unlocked them and slipped out, closing them exactly as the office door opened. I dove into the shadows behind a large ornamental plant. Through the glass, I saw Viktor Volkov enter. He looked furious. He went straight to the vault. Looked at the fake painting. He didn't notice. Yet. But then he turned and looked at the desk. At the open drawer. He knew. Volkov drew a pistol from inside his white jacket. He turned slowly toward the terrace doors where I was hiding. "Julian," I whispered, terror freezing my blood. "He's armed. He knows I'm here." "I know." Julian's voice was pure steel. "Jump." I looked down. The terrace was on the 7th floor. Below me, only the drop in a fabric awning 2 floors down. "Are you crazy?" "Jump, Lyra. I'll catch you." Volkov started walking toward the glass, gun raised. There was no time to think. No time for fear. I took a deep breath, clutched the painting against my chest, climbed onto the stone railing, and threw myself into the Paris darkness. As the wind whipped my face and the ground rushed up to meet me, the only thing I could think of was Julian Thorne's gray eyes and the promise he had made. If he didn't catch me, I would come back from hell just to kill him. The fall lasted an eternity and a second. The cold Paris air tore the breath from my lungs. The striped awning of the 5th floor rushed to meet me. The impact was brutal. The thick fabric gave way under my weight, tearing with a violent canvas sound that muffled my own scream. I rolled, the world spinning in a blur of stone and city lights. The awning cushioned the fall but catapulted me toward the edge. My fingers clawed at the void. The painting, pressed against my chest, was the only solid thing in the chaos. I was slipping toward death. Now. A steel arm wrapped around my waist. The pull was so strong the air left me in a pained groan. I didn't hit the ground. I hit a body. Julian was hanging from an industrial cable attached to the fourth-floor balcony, swinging in the void like a human pendulum. He gripped me with a ferocity that bordered on desperation, his legs locking around mine to stop me from falling. For a second, we hung there, dangling over the abyss of Avenue Montaigne. His face was inches from mine, pale, gray eyes wide and wild, dark hair whipped by the wind. "I told you I'd catch you," he growled, his voice hoarse, vibrating against my ear. Before I could answer, or thank him, or curse him, a sound cracked above us. Bang! The concrete beside Julian's head exploded into dust. Volkov. "Hold on," shouted Julian. He released the brake on the rappel gear. We fell. This time, it was a controlled descent, but the speed sent my stomach up to my throat. The wind howled. I hugged Julian's neck with my free arm, burying my face in the curve of his shoulder. We rolled onto the damp asphalt of the alley, a tangle of limbs, torn silk, and panting breath. We stopped against a brick wall. Julian was on top of me, his weight a comforting anchor. He lifted his head, eyes scanning the darkness above. Another shot ricocheted off a dumpster a meter away from us, sending orange sparks into the night. "Let's go." He got up and pulled me with him in a single fluid motion. My legs were shaking, not from fear, but from the pure discharge of adrenaline burning through my veins like acid. I gripped the roll painting tightly against my chest, feeling the drive in my neckline press against my skin with every beat of my heart. We ran down the alley. Julian didn't let go of my hand. His grip was bruising, possessive, vital. At the end of the alley, hidden under an old tarp, was our escape. Not a car. It was a matte black Ducati. Monstrous. "You're kidding," I shouted, looking at my gala dress torn at the thigh. "It's fast and fits where Volkov's SUVs don't." "Get on." He mounted the bike, the engine roaring to life with a guttural growl that vibrated in my chest. I climbed on behind him, the silk of the dress hiking up dangerously high. There was no room for modesty. I glued my body to his back, my legs wrapping around his hips, my arms circling his waist. "Hold on to me like your life depends on it," he shouted over the engine. "Because it does." He released the clutch. The bike shot forward. The force of the acceleration almost threw me backward, but I buried my face in his back, feeling the heat of his body through the thin shirt. Julian's scent, sweat, gunpowder, and that intoxicating natural musk, filled my lungs. We weaved through Paris traffic like a crazed needle. Horns blared. Lights blurred. I heard sirens in the distance, mixed with the aggressive sound of screeching tires. I looked back. A black armored sedan was demolishing a cafe table on the corner, coming after us. "Julian!" I screamed against his shoulder. I saw it. He banked the bike violently to the right, entering a narrow cobblestone street in Montmartre. My body followed his in perfect sync. We were a single creature, moving together in the darkness. The vibration of the engine between my legs, the freezing wind, his heat, it was terrifying. And it was the most exciting thing I had ever felt. The sedan tried to make the turn, but it was too wide. I heard the sound of metal crumpling against stone and glass shattering. We left them behind. Julian didn't slow down until we reached the banks of the Seine. He went down a restricted access ramp, riding dangerously close to the dark water, until stopping under an old stone bridge. The darkness there was absolute, broken only by the distant glow of the city. He killed the engine. The silence that followed was deafening. Only our ragged breathing and the sound of the river. I got off the bike, my legs almost giving out. Julian got off right after. He took off his helmet, which he hadn't even buckled, and threw it on the ground. His hair was wild, stuck to his forehead with sweat. "Are you okay?" His voice was hoarse, urgent. He came to me, big hands holding my shoulders, running down my arms, checking for injuries. "Lyra, look at me. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," I gasped, still clutching the painting. We made it." He looked at the painting in my hand, then at my face. The adrenaline was still at max level, dilating his pupils until the gray of his eyes was almost black. "You jumped," he whispered, as if he still didn't believe it. "I told you to jump and you didn't even hesitate. You said you'd catch me." The sentence hung between us, charged. Julian let out a low sound, something between a laugh and a growl. "God, you are insane." He pulled me in. This time, there was no gentleness. He held my face with both hands and crushed his mouth onto mine. The kiss tasted of violence and survival. It was the kiss of two people who had just cheated death. I dropped the painting, which fell to the ground with a dull thud, and buried my hands in his hair, pulling him closer, if that was even possible. He pushed me backward until my back hit the cold stone pillar of the bridge. His body pressed against mine, hard, hot, and demanding. I felt his hand go down my waist, find the bare skin of my exposed thigh, and move up, possessive, squeezing the flesh. "The drive," he murmured against my mouth, biting my lower lip. "Where is the drive?" "Here," I guided his hand to my neckline. His fingers grazed my breast as he fished out the small metal device. But he didn't pull away when he got it. He kept his hand there, his thumb caressing the soft skin, his heart beating against my chest like a hammer. He held the drive in front of our faces, glinting in the gloom. "Your freedom, Lyra." "Yeah," I whispered, unable to look away from his mouth. "And now?" Julian put the drive in his pocket without looking. Then he turned all his attention back to me. He took one of my legs and hooked it around his waist, pulling my hips against his. The friction was electric. I let out a low moan that was swallowed by his mouth. "Now," he said, his voice raw with desire, "we go to the boat. We leave France. But before that, if I don't get this red dress off you in the next 5 minutes, I think I'm going to die." I smiled against his lips, feeling the power, the danger, and the passion mix into a perfect cocktail. 5 minutes is a long time, Julian." He laughed against my neck, lifting me into his arms as we walked toward a small speedboat hidden in the shadows of the dock. The escape was complete. But the night was just beginning. The speedboat's cabin was tiny. Just a V-shaped bench, a small varnished wooden table, and the muffled sound of the river Seine lapping against the hull. Julian locked the door behind us with a definitive click, isolating the outside world, the sirens, and the chaos we had left in Paris. The space suddenly became saturated with our presence. I was still holding the rolled canvas of the Caravaggio in one hand, like a useless shield. Julian took it from my fingers gently, but without taking his eyes off mine, and tossed the priceless masterpiece onto an armchair as if it were an old newspaper. "Where were we?" he murmured. He didn't wait for an answer. He cornered me against the cabin wall, hands splayed on either side of my head, trapping me. The boat rocked gently beneath our feet, but Julian was solid as a rock. "The dress," I reminded him, my voice faltering as he pressed his body against mine, hip to hip, making it clear exactly how much he wanted me. "Ah, yes. The dress." His hands went down to the torn slit in my thigh. The red silk fabric, already ruined by the fall and the motorcycle escape, offered no resistance. Julian grabbed the silk and pulled. The sound of tearing fabric was loud, violent, and strangely satisfying. I gasped as his hands touched my bare skin, warm and rough. He traced the path from my waist to the clasp of my bra, eyes darkened with desire. "Do you know how long I've waited for this, Lyra?" His voice was a low growl against my neck. "Since the moment I saw you in that hall in Venice, pretending you weren't the most dangerous woman in the room." "You are the problem, Julian," I replied, pulling his sweater out of his pants, my fingers eager to feel his skin. "You make me lose control." "I hate losing control." "Then let go," he whispered, capturing my lips in a kiss that stole the rest of my breath. "Let me take control for once." He lifted me up. I wrapped my legs around his waist instinctively, and he carried me to the narrow bench. The movement was urgent, desperate. There was no gentleness, no time for slow foreplay. The adrenaline of nearly dying at Volkov's hands had sharpened every nerve, turning fear into pure need. When his skin finally met mine, without barriers, it was like a collision. He kissed me as if he wanted to mark me, his stubble grazing my sensitive skin, his hands holding me with a possessiveness that should have scared me, but only made me want more. The boat rocked, the river outside ran dark and cold, but inside, it was fire. "Say my name," he demanded, his forehead resting against mine, breaths mingling. "Julian." Again. Like it's the only thing that matters. "Julian." The night dissolved into sensations. The smell of sandalwood and sweat, the sound of our ragged breathing, his touch that seemed to burn and heal at the same time. For a few moments, I stopped being the phantom thief. I stopped being a criminal on the run. I was just a woman in the arms of the only man who could keep up with my pace. Much later, the silence returned. We were lying on the narrow bench, limbs intertwined, covered by Julian's tuxedo jacket which he had retrieved from somewhere. The boat continued to navigate itself, guided by the autopilot Julian had activated before we destroyed the cabin. I rested my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow down to a steady, strong rhythm. His fingers traced abstract patterns on my bare arm. "We are leaving France," he said calmly, his voice vibrating in his ribcage. "The boat will take us to a freighter in the English Channel. From there, international waters." I lifted my head to look at him. In the dim light, he looked less like the ruthless predator and more human. There was weariness in his eyes, but also a serenity I had never seen. "And then?" I asked. Julian reached out and grabbed his pants from the floor. He took the small black drive from the pocket. The metal shined in the low light. He held it between us. "You're part of the deal." I sat up, pulling the jacket to cover myself better. I took the drive. It was light. Insignificant. But it contained my life. My DNA. My past. With this destroyed, I would be a real ghost. I could go anywhere. Start over. "Thank you," I whispered. Julian watched me. There was no expectation on his face, only intense curiosity. "Are you going to destroy it?" "It's the first thing I'm going to do when I find a secure computer." He nodded, then looked away toward the dark porthole. "The freighter is going to Lisbon. From there, you can catch a flight to wherever you want. Brazil, Asia, wherever ghosts go to retire." I felt a strange tightness in my chest. "And you?" "I have a Caravaggio to deliver to a very patient buyer and a fixer to disappear." He gave a crooked smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "My job is done, Lyra." The silence stretched. It was the cue. He was giving me the out. I had what I wanted. He had what he wanted. We could part ways in Lisbon and never see each other again. It would be the smart thing to do. The safe thing. I looked at the drive in my hand. Then I looked at the man who had jumped off a building with me, who had caught me when I fell, who had made me feel more alive in the last hour than in 10 years of heists. Julian, I started. He looked at me. Lisbon is beautiful this time of year, I said, twirling the drive between my fingers. But I heard it's dangerous for a woman to travel alone with stolen jewelry. He frowned. You didn't steal any jewelry. We left the fake necklace at the hotel. I smiled, brought my hand to my neck, and unclasped the black diamond necklace he had put on me on the plane. The one worth a fortune. I never leave empty-handed, remember? Julian's wolfish smile returned, slow and dangerous. He realized. I wasn't talking about the jewelry. Are you saying you need a bodyguard? I'm saying I'm unemployed. And that maybe, just maybe. I'm not ready to retire. Julian sat up, the sheet falling to his waist. He took my hand, the one holding the necklace, and kissed my fingers, one by one. I have a contact in Morocco, he murmured against my skin. There is a rumor about a lost emerald from the Spanish crown. The job is impossible, suicidal, and poorly paid. I leaned forward, brushing my lips against his. When do we leave? Julian laughed, pulling me back down, to him, to danger, to life. As soon as we leave these waters, cara mia. As soon as we leave.